Hello my friends, welcome to our new channel where you can enjoy the most epic stories of legendary cyclists. Today we present the one who's possibly the best crooner in history. He cemented his triumphs on this discipline in which he didn't take prisoners. With optimal physical conditions for the fight against the clock, he was known by the nickname the Extraterrestrial. Who wants to know the best time trials of Miguel INDURAIN? Then stay to the wheel, I'll tell you. In the year 1996, professional cyclists attended, for the first time, the Olympic events. The Navarrese was presented in Atlanta as an authentic legend and, as he himself said, with the illusion of a juvenile. Spain was magnificently represented, since in the shadow of Miguel also came Abraham Olano, another phenomenal crooner. The route didn't favor the Spanish cyclists. It was a street circuit in which, although it had to be repeated until completing a long distance 52 kilometers, the curve was constant and there were only two steep slopes. INDURAIN and Olano, who, due to their corpulence, were not agile runners, would have preferred a course with long straights where they could fly. It wasn't going to be any walk, since they were also going to have to face the strongest rivals of the time: Bjorn Ries, Yevgeny Berzin, Tony Rominger, Alex Zülle, or Chris Boardman, the best specialists in the discipline. Boardman led the race initially, reaching at kilometer 20 an advantage of 18 seconds with INDURAIN and 22 with Olano. But the Navarrese, who's a delight to see coupled to the bicycle, managed to go back. He began to beat Boardman's times at kilometer 32. The Briton still had 5 seconds with 6 kilometers left with respect to the Basque cyclist, but finally he endorsed 19 at the finish line. INDURAIN finally got 12 and 31 seconds ahead, respectively. Like the champions, he had come out last to the race, and he was able to cross the finish line, knowing himself to be the winner. The World Cup in Colombia was one of the toughest in history. Both the online test and the chrono, since the height was a very large handicap for the runners, who would have to acclimatize a few weeks in advance. Spain, the big favorite, stayed a few weeks in Colorado and Duitama. It was the second time that the test was disputed, and the previous year, INDURAIN had resigned to try to beat the hour record, which at that time was held by Chris Boardman. A record that would be beat, but that would only last 2 months. 42 kilometers of routes with a hard final climb to the Plaza de Simón Bolívar in Tunja. The images are Dantesque. The final climb to place in Tunja leaves photographs to remember. Drowned cyclists, unable to find oxygen in their lungs, crawling painfully. INDURAIN is one of the few who surpasses it with some dignity. Although no one came out behind him, Miguel wasn't the last to cross the finish line. He had doubled the Italian Maurizio Fondriest and was 18 seconds away from doing the same with Eric Breuking, who started 4 minutes later. The Navarrese brilliantly won the gold medal with his teammate Abraham Olano in second place on the podium, a double that they would repeat days later in the line race, but in a different position. It was perhaps his first major exhibition. INDURAIN arrived at the Giro d'Italia as the winner of the previous tour and as preparation for the French test of that year in 1993. However, the Navarrese was the Maglia Rosa practically the entire turn, without going through excessive difficulties. Chiappucci was his main rival, who finished the turn in second and being, unfortunately, the greatest victim of this history. With the turn sentenced, in the first point, INDURAIN marks muscle. In 21 kilometers, he puts 35 seconds to Chiappucci and more than a minute to the other two contenders, Cioccolli and Giovannetti. From then to the end, the differences increased in an incredible way. The second, the versatile Guido Bontempi, was 2 minutes 46 seconds away. Until that moment, we had never seen distances like this before. Already entering Milan, one of the most iconic images of the Spanish rider is produced during his participations in the Giro. In front of all the tifosi, the Navarrese bends the local idol, who can only see how he's overtaken by a locomotive and is barely able to follow the wheel. Indurain enters as the first Spanish winner of the Italian round, giving a whole exhibition, but that was just an appetizer of what we would later see in French lands. I think we are not exaggerating if we consider the time trial of Bergerac during the 1994 Tour as a masterpiece. With a Miguel INDURAIN at the height of his career in search of his fourth Tour, he gave us this exhibition worthy of a cycling god. The second week of the Tour began with everything still to be decided. 64 kilometers of fight against the clock on a perfect route for the Spaniard. It seemed like a hard day with more than 40 degrees of temperature and an almost melted asphalt, which gave some danger in the turns. Indurain was a complete steamroller from start to finish, exceeding 50 kilometers per hour on average. Villalbas simply flew. More than 123 riders of the peloton reached the finish line in more than 10 minutes. Among them, Marco PANTANI, who would finish third in that Tour de France. At kilometer 70 of the race, Indurain doubled Lance Armstrong dressed in the rainbow jersey, an image that would eventually gain value and morbidity. The difference in pace is beastly. His majestic figure on the bike, his imposing pedaling, and his excessive strength led Indurain, that July 11, 1994, to excellence on the bicycle. Only Tony Rominger, three-time winner of the Vuelta a España, remained with a halo of hope 2 minutes away. Ugrimov, who lost 6, would finish the Tour in second place. With that work of art, the Navarrese practically sentenced the Tour of the year 1994. And if there was still any doubt, he would dispel them 2 days later in Hautacam. This is another work of art. Very difficult to choose between Bergerac and Luxembourg. Let me know in the description which seems better to you. And it's that Luxembourg was the beginning, the first big blow, dismantling the arguments of rivals who had put him in trouble previous days or who had focused on the Tour. Indurain already wore the one in Luxembourg. He had won a Tour. Others also won a Tour, but that certified the excellence and certainty that the cycle would be long, very long. It was the day the press nicknamed him the Alien. The first reference was devastating. In just 10 kilometers, the difference with many of their rivals exceeded the minute. Incredible. But things were getting better. Fans could witness how, before reaching the finish line in Luxembourg, the Banesto runner was going to double 3 runners, the last one on the French champion Laurent, who declared at the finish line that he had been overtaken by an authentic, hence the nickname, extraterrestrial. The carnage at the finish line was savage. Armand de las Cuevas delayed 3 minutes, Gianni Bugno 3 minutes and 41 seconds, and Greg LeMond beyond the 4. Chapucci more than 6. Simply devastating. But it wasn't just the brands. That day, the Spanish champion made it clear to the world of cycling that we were facing a vintage rider who was going to dominate the cycling of the 90s and gave such a moral blow to his rivals that many could never recover. Perhaps for all this, we're talking not only about the best time trial of Indurain, but the best time trial of all time. Thank you for following me, subscribe, and don't miss our next video.